Okay, folks, we got to talk about this today. This is your resistance history dispatch for April 15th, when they say homegrowns are next. What I'm learning as I write about a resistance history of the United States is this. Resistance doesn't begin when the tanks roll in. It begins the moment a government starts redrawing the lines of reality and dares you to say no. Last week, the Trump administration refused to comply with a unanimous, for this court, unanimous Supreme Court order to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego García, a man wrongly deported to El Salvador. They didn't argue the facts. They distorted them. They claimed the court didn't really mean what it said. Then they, just yesterday, sat in the Oval Office and declared the case closed. But that obviously is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of the next chapter. Because what Trump said next was this: homegrowns are next. Meaning American citizens, people with U.S. passports, born here, living here, targeted for deportation. Not because of where they come from, but because of who they are, what they think, what they might have done or might do, or just what they represent. And this is not theoretical. He said it directly to El Salvador's president while proposing that violent American citizens, those he called monsters, be imprisoned abroad. He even joked that El Salvador should build 5 more places to house them. That's not immigration policy. That's state exile. And if you're looking for historical parallels, they exist. We've talked about them before. And the pattern is darker every time. In 1798, the Alien Enemies Act gave the president power to imprison and deport people based only on nationality. In 1919 and 1920, the Palmer raids swept up immigrants and radicals with no due process. In 1942, Japanese-American incarceration in concentration camps stripped 120,000 people of their homes and freedom based solely on ancestry. 70,000 of them were U.S. citizens. And during the Cold War, Americans were surveilled, blacklisted, and exiled from public life because of political beliefs alone, deprived of liberty and property. Now, the idea isn't just to monitor dissent. It's to outsource punishment too. To ship citizens abroad for imprisonment in allied autocracies. Imagine that statement for the United States. That's where this is headed if left unchecked. And if your response is still, but that can't happen, ask yourself, who's going to stop it? The Congress? The courts? The press? In Abrego Garcia's case, the Supreme Court did rule, and the regime ignored it. So let's be clear, this is a test, a legal and moral stress test to see what the public will tolerate. If they can make deportation a tool of political convenience, if they can make, here it is, citizenship conditional, then resistance isn't optional. It's not a moral choice. It's a practical necessity. It's a moral imperative. And here's your micro-resistance of the day. Make power work harder. Microresistance isn't just symbolic. It's the beginning of accountability, and you can do it from wherever you are. Here's what that looks like today. Disrupt the narrative. Share the Abrego García story and call it what it is. Illegal deportation followed by state defiance of the judiciary. Don't let them control the language, and don't get bogged down into people saying, oh my gosh, now we're in a constitutional crisis. Focus on the facts, focus on the situation, focus on the fact that we're now in a state of resistance. Document the distortion. Archive the administration statements. Miller, Bondi, Trump, and contrast them with the court's actual ruling. Let the dissonance speak for itself. Just post them and let them sit there. Refuse normalization. When somebody calls this just rhetoric, oh, he's always saying crazy things, remind them that every authoritarian movement starts by just floating ideas, then builds prisons. Connect the past. Post the parallels. Japanese-American concentration camps, Palmer raids, McCarthy area blacklists. Use history to remind people how this works because of how it has worked. Support organizations fighting detention and exile, not just the legal aid orgs, although they're important, but watchdogs that are tracking offshore prisons, private contractors, and authoritarian collusion. And practice digital sanctuary, which is an important new concept in the digital ecosystem. Amplify those voices most at risk and tell their stories. Make sure you're reflecting the news that's also accurate about them, about migrants, legal residents, dual citizens, by resharing their experiences and building online refuge networks built on the truth and honest reporting. And here's one you might not expect. Read with your child. As an act of, let's call it gentle resistance and value building, we are reading My Lost Freedom by George Takei to our toddler. This is a powerful, moving book about his own incarceration as a child under Executive Order 9066. It's a beautiful, age-appropriate way to begin conversations about justice, power, and more to the point, what we owe to each other. Resistance always loud. Sometimes it's sitting beside a child, turning a page, and telling the truth early. This is resistance before it gets ugly. Before martial law, before exile becomes policy. If there's a lesson that I'm learning in building every chapter of my book, it's this. Power never checks itself. Resistance makes it work harder just to hold on, and that work, the extra weight, is what gives us the time to organize. Draw the line now.